A tapestry crocheted shoulder bag is an important part of a Guatemalan Mayan Indian man's outfit. Used for carrying seeds in planting season and for carrying lunch or dinner, these bags are not only beautifully crafted, they are also very functional. The art of crocheting was probably taught to colonial Indians by the Spaniards. Each region in Guatemala has distinct color combinations and design motifs. The tapestry crocheted shoulder bag is one of the few items of clothing in Guatemala that is not made by women. Even though many Indian men have turned to Western-styled clothing, most continue to make and use traditional tapestry crocheted shoulder bags. If a man does not crochet his own shoulder bag, he buys one at the local market, since some men produce extra bags to supplement their meager incomes. Tapestry crochet is not limited to Guatemala. In some areas of the Mideast, Africa, and South America, colorful hats are crocheted by local artisans. Hello and welcome. I'm Carol Norton, and I'd like to introduce you to Tapestry Crochet. Tapestry crochet differs from ordinary crochet in its texture, tension, and how colors are worked. This technique will enable you to crochet a 2 or more color motif with relative ease. These shoulder bags are the first pieces that I tapestry crocheted. Then I did these large pictorial wall tapestries. Let's look at the materials we will need. Many types of yarn and thread are suitable for tapestry crochet. Heavy and fine synthetic and natural fibers all work wonderfully. One important consideration is that all of the yarns being crocheted at one time should be of the same weight. If a thin yarn is used with a thicker yarn, the thick yarn will occupy more space when worked, warping the piece. I learned this lesson with self-portrait. The medium brown yarn in this piece was thicker than the beige yarn. Before I was finally able to have it successfully blocked, it had a large bow in the lower portion. A curved perimeter was the final result. Some yarns will end up stiffer after blocking because of their inherent properties. The 100% polypropylene that I used for this blue basket was the stiffest when blocked, followed by the modacrylic carpet yarns. I found that the modacrylic carpet yarns and carpet wools were easier to work with than were the acrylic yarns because they have more body and they split less. String, rope, or wire can also be combined with or substituted for yarn to create interesting results. Many types of crochet hooks can be used for tapestry crochet. Some steel hooks have an easy-to-hold handle. The size of the hook is actually dependent on the thickness of the yarn, but looks can be deceiving. For instance, I would use a size C crochet hook with both of these yarns. Although the one on the left appears to be thicker, when they're worked, they're actually both the same thickness. In order to learn the basics of tapestry crochet, we'll be making an eyeglass case like this one. For this project, I chose a 3-ply pearl cotton or heavy crochet cotton. We'll need 1 ounce of beige and 1 1/4 ounces of light blue. We'll also need a size 3 crochet hook, some transparent tape, pencils, a ruler, an eraser, a safety pin, scissors, and of course the insert that came with the video. I will be crocheting right-handed. If you're left-handed, look at this video in a mirror, and when I say right, think left, and when I say left, think right. Okay, to start with, first we have to make a slip knot. To do that, take your crochet cotton and make a loop. Put the yarn behind the loop and pull it through. This is a slip knot, and you can tighten it by pulling on both ends. Next thing we have to do is wrap the thread around our finger, around our little finger in front of the ring and middle fingers, and a couple of times around the index finger. We'll hold the knot, or the slip knot, between our middle finger and thumb. The next thing you have to do is learn how to hold the crochet hook. For tapestry crochet, you should hold the hook with your right hand, with your thumb and middle fingers on the flat part of the hook. If you're used to holding your hook a different way, you should change your grip, since you really need a good hold of the hook for the tension required in tapestry crochet. Okay, now to start to crochet a chain, the first thing you do is insert the hook into the loop of the slip knot, pull on the thread a little bit. Again, hold the base of the knot between your middle finger and thumb, and flip the yarn over the hook from right to left. This is called yarning over. You then turn your hook downwards and grab that yarn over and pull it through the loop. This is called a chain stitch. And it would be good for you to practice a number of these stitches until you become confident and you can make a long, even chain. Simply pull up the yarn as you need it, yarn over, and pull through. Now for tapestry crochet, we need a fairly tight chain. Okay, I'm pulling the yarn, holding my chain, yarning over, and pulling through my loop. Now in tapestry crochet, should you make a mistake, it's very easy to correct. To rip out, all you do is remove the hook and pull. Then when you come to the part that is all right, you just stick in your hook again into the loop, wrap the yarn around your left hand, and just start to work again. Practice making a chain until you have a fairly long chain with tight, even stitches. Gauge is important in tapestry crochet. If a piece is not crocheted with a tight gauge, the carried yarns will show and the piece will not have a stiff, sturdy appearance. Rules are made to be broken, however. For instance, this afghan was crocheted with a loose gauge. It is not stiff, and the carried yarns, which show, actually give it an interesting appearance. In order to calculate the gauge, you first have to know what a tapestry crochet stitch looks like. Tapestry crochet stitches are V-shaped, either vertically or horizontally. To calculate the number of stitches per inch, simply line up one of the stitches between an inch marker and count the stitches between this and that inch marker. For instance, this eyeglass case has a stitch gauge of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches per inch. To calculate the row gauge, simply line up an inch marker between two rows and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and a half. So the row gauge of this eyeglass case is 6 and a half. Okay, now let's start to crochet our eyeglass case. You'll have to crochet a few inches before you can check your stitch and row gauge. Chain 25 stitches for round 1. If you would like a wider or narrower eyeglass case, you can increase or decrease in multiples of 5. The base of this eyeglass case has 20 stitches. Okay, I have 20 stitches here. I'm going to chain 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here's my chain of 25 stitches. The next step is to single crochet across the top. To do that, you insert your hook into the bottom of the second loop to the left of the hook. Insert the hook, yarn over, pull through a loop. You now have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over again and pull that through both of the loops on your hook. This is a single crochet stitch. Go insert your hook into the next bottom loop of the chain, yarn over, pull through a loop, again yarn over and pull it through both of the loops. You now have 2 single crochet stitches. Okay, we'll single crochet across until we reach the end of our chain, and we'll have 24 stitches when we finish the first half of this round. Okay, I only have one more stitch to go to make 24 single crochet stitches. Now if you remember, we chained 25, but since we started to single crochet in the second chain, we lost one. So the end of this row, the first half of round 2, should have 24 single crochet stitches. Now the next step is also a deviation from traditional crochet. We're going to crochet, single crochet, 2 more stitches into this last chain for a total of 3 stitches in one stitch. Another deviation is we're going to turn our piece over so that what was on the top is now on the bottom. We're now going to complete the round by single crocheting across the new top. Okay, we've already single crocheted 3 into this stitch, so you insert your hook into the top loop, which used to be the bottom loop, single crochet 1 stitch into each top loop. When we finish this round, we will have a total of 49 stitches. Notice that I'm single crocheting around the tail end in order to secure it. When we reach the end of this round, we'll have a total of 49 stitches, and we will not be increasing any stitches, so every round from now on will have 49 stitches. Sometimes it's difficult to tell where a round ends and another begins. Let's see, I'm almost there. And we just have one more stitch here to make the 49. Okay. Now in order to tell where one round ends and another begins, you might want to slip a safety pin into this last stitch, and we'll remove it when we come to it again. With this particular project, it's not that essential that you know where each round ends, but on the more complex projects, it's important to know, especially when we start crocheting in a spiral. Now with tapestry crochet, the front of the work is always facing you. You can see the back does look quite different. Being able to carry colors is essential for tapestry crochet. This will enable you to work a 2 or more color motif without floats on the back. And also the carried yarns help to make the piece more durable. The first thing we'll have to do is insert our hook. From now on, we'll be inserting the hook under the top 2 loops of each stitch, like this. And to carry a yarn, we'll be carrying our beige yarn. Just lay it on top of the 2 loops and leave about a 2-inch end hanging out, and hold the yarn in place with your thumb, and then just continue to crochet under and over the piece. There's our first stitch of round 3. One thing you have to really be careful of is not to put more than one stitch in each single crochet stitch of the previous row, because you don't want to end up with more than 49 stitches in each round. Okay, more than one yarn can be carried at the same time for a more complex motif, and for each yarn that you carry, the stitch height will be slightly increased. It's better to limit the amount of yarns to about 3, though, to avoid a tangled mess of yarns. Even if you won't need to switch yarns for several rows, it's a good idea to start carrying the yarn from the very beginning of the piece so that your stitch height will be consistent throughout the piece. Being able to carry yarns also eliminates knots and loose ends. If you remembered, when we were working the second half of round 2, we were actually carrying a yarn when we were working over the tail piece. If you were to run out of yarn, what you would do is start to carry the yarn, maybe 7 or 8 stitches before you'll need it, and then just switch to the new yarn, and then carry the tail end of the yarn you just ran out of. Okay, now that we've single crocheted several stitches, I can go back and snip this end off. I can also snip off the tail from the very beginning, since both of these have been well anchored. So I continue across the row, single crocheting 1 stitch into each stitch of the previous row. And if done correctly, you shouldn't be able to see the carried yarn from the front or the back of the piece. Now I'm coming to the end of the first half of this round. You have to be extremely careful that you only crochet 1 stitch into each of these corner stitches. Sometimes it appears as if you haven't crocheted into them and you accidentally increase the number of stitches. If you should end up with more than 49 stitches, the tube or the walls of the eyeglass case will start to expand. And also this particular motif works out perfectly with 49 stitches, or a multiple of 5 minus 1. Okay, now we have to have the outside or the face side of the stitch toward us at all times. Let's see now, did I actually put one in here? Yes, I was just about to make a mistake. It appeared that I hadn't crocheted into this, but it was forced down this end, so this is the next stitch right here. This is perhaps one of the more difficult rows because we don't have the pattern to follow. Once we have the dark and light pattern, it will be easier to see where the stitches actually are on the very ends of each round. I am coming now to the end of this round, and I'll be removing the safety pin and replacing it in the new last stitch. See, we have 1, 2 more to go. Whoops. Okay, now let's take this pin out. which marks the end of the previous round, and we'll crochet into this stitch. And then replace the pin in the top, letting us know that this is the end of this round. Okay. Now, you can see the eyeglass case starting to shape up. This is, again, is the outside and the inside. And we should have 49 stitches going all the way around. It's a good idea to count them now, because if you end up with more stitches, if you made a mistake on either end, it will throw off the pattern. Please take a look at your insert so that I can explain the figures to you. Figures 1 and 2 show the charted motif used for the eyeglass case. Figure 1 illustrates how the crochet motif will actually appear. Each shell shape on the graph paper represents a single stitch. The dark shells represent the darker yarn, while the lighter shells represent the lighter yarn. The charted pattern is read from bottom to top, the 2 corresponding to the second round, 3 to the third, etc. Although the shell pattern graph paper gives a more realistic image of the finished product, I find it easier to actually work the crochet motifs following the square-ruled graph paper, figure 2. Again, the bottom 2 rows correspond to the second and third rounds that we'll be crocheting. It's much easier to visualize when you're supposed to change from the dark to the light yarn with this square-ruled graph paper. Okay, now we're ready to start round 4. If you look at your graph, you'll notice that the first 3 stitches are dark single crochet stitches. Again, you have to make sure that you only put 1 stitch in each stitch of the previous row. So here we have 2 and 3, and now I'm ready to do a tapestry crochet stitch, which is actually very similar to the single crochet stitch. I yarned over, and I have 2 loops on my hook. And now what makes this is a tapestry crochet stitch is I'm going to yarn over the carried yarn and pull that through the last 2 loops. And I'll now switch yarns, and I'll work with the white or beige and carry the blue. Now, according to my chart, I have to do 2 beige stitches. So here we have 1, which is very similar to single crochet. But now that I'm going to switch colors, I'll yarn over, pull through a beige loop, and then switch again to the color yarn, and that final loop is done with the colored yarn. Now I'll work 3 more dark stitches. I'll continue this sequence of 2 light and 3 dark around the entire piece. There we go. Whoops, I made a mistake. Okay, easily, when you make a mistake, as I said, it's easy to correct. I just have to remove that loop and pull through this last one with blue. Okay, after several yarn switches, you'll notice that your yarns are twisting together. You'll have to stop every once in a while, and you can remove the hook and let your piece hang and untwist them. Okay, when you're working with several yarns, this can become quite a problem. Another way you can switch yarns without them twisting together is, okay, let's separate the balls here. And we'll always make sure that the dark yarn is to the back and the lighter to the front. We're almost finished with this round. Now as I switch to the blue, I'm going to lay this beige to the front and hold the blue. If you notice, there's a slight twist there which is hidden by the stitch. This is very helpful when you're working with a lot of different colored yarns. Okay. Now we're nearing the end of this round, and we can actually remove the safety pin now. With this particular pattern, the next row will be over one stitch. It's important to know where each round begins and ends on more complex patterns. With this particular pattern, kind of helps you know if you have increased stitches or not. Okay, now I'm about to begin round 5 with one light stitch, switching to dark. And now, if you'll notice, on round 5 I need 3 dark stitches. Well, this particular pattern will automatically show you where to go. You have 2 dark stitches, and the third will be right over the light stitch. This particular pattern consists of a multiple of 5 minus 1, so that on every row you'll be automatically 1 to the left. So let's go ahead and crochet. From now on, we will be crocheting without regard to where a round begins or ends. And we'll just keep crocheting, 3 dark, 2 light, until the eyeglass case is approximately 6 inches long. You can make it longer, of course, if you like. We will always have the face of the eyeglass case towards us, and we'll have to form it a little, help the corners. Just take a look at what we have. 3 and 2 automatically over 1, matching the square graph grid. Okay, once you've crocheted 6 inches of pattern, you're ready to crochet the last 2 rounds in color, which I've done. And you continuously carry the beige yarn. When you're just 3 stitches from the very end of the eyeglass case, you can snip off this carried beige yarn. We're about to finish off our project. Okay, for the last 3 stitches, we will single crochet a stitch, another, and for the very last stitch, we're going to yarn over, pull through a loop, and this time, instead of yarning over again, we're going to pull it right through the loop on the hook. This is called a slip stitch. Once we've done our slip stitch, we're going to cut the yarn, leaving about a 6-inch end. And then we're going to yarn over and pull it through the loop on our hook. This will secure the stitch so that it will not be able to unravel. And to work in the finished end, we'll go through the top 2 loops of the very next stitch and grab that yarn and pull it through. Then from the other side, from back to front, we'll do the same thing. And we'll repeat this about 5 times so that we know that this end is really secured in there. Okay. I hope you've enjoyed this project. The pattern is very interesting and fairly easy to do. And it's pretty easy also to make variations on this particular change purse. I crocheted on the diagonal, then I crocheted with the beige stitches right on top of the beige stitches, and the blue over the blue, up and then to the diagonal a bit and then up again. Okay, so we're done with our eyeglass case. All that's left to do is to snip our end. All of the pieces that you tapestry crochet will require blocking. I use an ironing board or a hard flat table for smaller pieces, or the floor for larger pieces. On very large pieces, though, I have them blocked at a dry cleaner. Remember, though, you have to tell the dry cleaner what type of fiber you use so that he won't melt them, because remember, synthetic fibers melt at high temperatures. Let me show you how I do blocking. First, I put a towel down on my surface, and then I place my piece on the towel and cover it with another towel. I prefer to use a steam iron. If you don't have a steam iron, you can use a regular iron and just sprinkle this top towel with water. Make sure that your iron is set to the proper setting. Since our eyeglass case is cotton, I'll set it on cotton. And remember also not to burn yourself. Remember, the steam is hot and the iron is hot. So what I do is I place the iron on top of the towel and push down fairly hard. Then I uncover the piece and turn it over, cover it again, and block the other side. Now some pieces might require several blockings. You can block them, let them dry out a little, and then reblock them. Okay, you can see how that looks much better. And now let's block this piece. This handbag was crocheted out of wool, so I have to change my setting to wool. I'll place down this flap and cover it with the towel and block it. Now for synthetic fibers, you can use your iron, but you have to set it on one of the lowest settings that you have, because we wouldn't want you to melt the piece. Unfortunately, I learned that lesson through experience. You can see it looks much flatter already. Why don't we turn it over and block it from this side? This is a piece that might need a few blockings. Okay, now your tapestry crocheted pieces can be washed or dry cleaned. If you wash them, handle them as you would a fine sweater. And again, if you dry clean them, make sure you tell the dry cleaner the type of fiber used. Okay, now this looks better. It's flatter, but the edges still need a little more work. But I'm going to let this cool off and show you how to block the inside. For baskets or purses such as this, you can insert a folded towel. Let's see, let's move this over. And you put the towel into the purse, and this towel is going to support it. And then put the piece down on the table, have the towel fairly tight in there, cover it, and then block it as we did the flap. Just hold it down, lift, move, hold it down, lift, move. Okay, you can see it's already starting to look much better, much flatter. Okay, let me show you how you would do a basket. A basket such as this, you can find a can that's pretty close in size, cover it with a towel, and then insert the can into your piece. If you don't have a can, you can again stuff a towel into it. Now this is a synthetic piece, so I would have to set my iron very low, cover it with another towel, and then iron it as I did the purse. Why don't I show you some more tapestry crochet techniques? Okay, now that we've finished blocking, let me show you some more tapestry crochet techniques. As we learned when we made the eyeglass case, if you don't increase the amount of stitches, the walls of the piece will continue straight up. This is also true with this basket. Although it's cylindrical, the walls continue straight up. Now with this basket, I decided to decrease when I got to the shoulder. On this basket, I did a combination of increasing, not increasing, remaining the same, and then decreasing. Notice how the profile of the basket comes out straight up and then goes in. I'd like to show you how to increase and decrease. First, let's learn how to increase or make the sides come out. It's really fairly simple. All you have to do is to crochet 2 stitches in the same stitch. So here I've crocheted a stitch. Instead of moving over to the next stitch, I'm going to go back into that very same stitch and crochet again. You might have accidentally increased when you were working on your eyeglass case. So here we have 2 stitches in the place of 1. If I were to increase all the way around the perimeter, the top would come out. Let me do another one. Single crochet a stitch, still carrying my yarn, and then in the same stitch increase. Depending on the amount of increases you do, the sides of the basket can come out at a 45-degree angle, or gradually you might want to increase and then crochet a couple of stitches without increasing and then increase again. Okay, now let me show you how to decrease. We'll just rip these out. And now I'm going to make the top of the basket go in by decreasing the amount of stitches. Okay, now to decrease, you insert your hook, pull through a loop, and now you're going to insert it again into the next stitch and pull through a loop so that you have 3 loops on your hook. Now you yarn over and pull it through all 3 stitches. So as you can see, you have 1 stitch here taking the place of 2. Let me do a plain single crochet, and then I'm going to decrease again. And this is what I did for this pattern. For this basket, I decreased in the white area and pulled the circumference in. Okay, let's see, here's another single. Okay, I'm going to decrease now. Pull through a loop, pull through another loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And you can see that even with these few decreases, the side of this small basket is starting to go in. Now through the, I've actually taken a pretty conservative approach with my different projects, but actually you can really be creative. This particular camera case I made by starting a spiral here, working into a basket, and then I increased a while, and then I started working back and forth, which I'll show you in a few minutes. And then here I had to decrease to bring it in again. And really any shape, size, or form you can easily do with tapestry crochet. Okay, why don't I show you now how to do a spiral. I used the spiral for the bottom of the baskets and for the clock faces. And this over here might look like a basket, but actually it's a shoulder bag. You just put the strap through the hole here, and voila. Okay, let's learn how to crochet a spiral now. The spiral was used to crochet this clock face and also for the base of the baskets and for the front part of the camera case. To start the spiral, you first make a slip knot, same type of knot we use for the eyeglass case. Pull it tight, and we're going to chain 8. You could chain less, but I'm going to show you how to start the clock face, and we need a little hole in the middle to insert the clock movement. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, if you wanted to crochet the bottom of a basket, you could make a chain of 4 stitches, and then you wouldn't have this little circular opening. Okay, now I inserted my needle into the base of the first chain. I'm going to yarn over and pull through a slip stitch through both loops on my hook. Okay, now I now have a little circle. I'm going to be crocheting 12 stitches now onto this circle, over and under the tail end as if I were carrying it. So we'll start with 1, 2. This is a little awkward at first. 3, 4, 5, 6, whoops, 7, 9, 10. We just need 2 more stitches to make 12. Okay, now when you're crocheting a spiral, it's very difficult to tell where the row ends, and it's extremely helpful to use a safety pin. So I'm going to pin the very last stitch as a guide, and then when I come around to it again, I'll know I'm starting the next round. Okay, for this next round, I'm going to increase in every stitch for a total of 24 stitches. Okay, here we go with, here's the first, and now another in that same stitch. Again, I'm carrying the tail, and I'll continue to do that until it's in enough that I can snip it off. Actually, I can probably snip it off right after this stitch. It's not going anywhere. Now, if you were to carry a yarn, you could start right now carrying it. For this clock face, I carried the red from the very beginning so that my stitch height would remain the same. Now, for this round, I'm increasing in every stitch. For the next round, I would increase in every other stitch. And the round after that, I would increase in every third stitch. If I were to increase too many times, I would have a wavy sort of surface. And if you don't increase enough times, you start to have a bowl shape. Okay, we're almost to the end here, and then I'll give you a look at it. coming around to the safety pin again. When I get to it, I'll pull it out. Okay, I'm at this last stitch. Pull out the pin and single crochet 2 stitches in that stitch, and then replace the pin. Okay, now as I said, for the next round, here you can take a look at it. Here's the reverse. Now you can, by looking at this lid, you can tell how I increased here in every round. And then if you notice little rays coming off of this lid, you can see where I increased in every other stitch, every third, every fourth, every fifth, and so on. Okay, now when you're increasing and decreasing, a lot of times your project might look a bit lumpy and bumpy. But if you remember when we blocked, you can get rid of a lot of those lumps and bumps with your iron. Okay, now I promised you I'd tell you how to crochet a flat tapestry. Why don't we do that next? Let me show you how to do flat tapestry crochet. If you notice, the front of the tapestry crochet stitch is very different from the back of the stitch. There are 2 ways you can achieve this look. The first one I call alternate row switch hands tapestry crochet, which is quite a mouthful, and you'll see why I call it this in a minute. To begin, you make a chain and then you start to single crochet across the row, just as you did when you were making your eyeglass case. I'm almost to the end of the row right now. Just a few more stitches. And again, this is a real deviation from regular crochet. Now when we reach the very end, this is the last stitch, I'm going to chain 1, and now I'm going to switch hands. I'm going to hold the hook with my left hand and the crochet cotton with my right. I'm using the same materials we use for the eyeglass case, the size 3 hook and heavy crochet cotton, but you can use any material, any yarn or a hook. Of course, the hook size depends on the thickness of the yarn. So now that I've turned the piece around, and I'm going to insert my hook. Let's see, first let's put the tail end over here and we'll carry that across. Okay, insert my hook, yarn over, pull through a loop, yarn over again, and pull through another loop. And we'll work all the way across the row in reverse. Of course, it is a bit awkward. You will get used to it, but as I said before, I think the result is really worth the effort. Okay, when I reach the end of the row, I'll cut my tail end off, and then I'll start to carry another yarn. You should probably practice this technique before you start to carry the yarn to get used to it. Okay, we're nearing the end of the row right now. I think I'm going to go ahead and cut off this tail end. It's fairly well secure. We just have 2 more stitches to go. 1 and 2. And now, at the end of the row, I will chain 1. And now I'm going to switch hands again. And I can start carrying my yarn. Remember to carry the yarn from the very beginning of the piece, even if you won't need it for a few rows, for a consistent stitch height. Okay, now we can go ahead and cut off this end. It's secured. And just let me show you how this looks. See, we have the front of the stitch on the same side on both rows and our carried yarn. And the back, as you can see, looks quite different. Okay, now let me show you the second way you can do this. I'll just rip this out. Okay, the second method is called reverse single crochet. Again, you make a chain and single crochet across the row as we did with the alternate technique. Chain 1 at the end of the row. And now we're actually going to turn this around. This is the only time you will crochet with the back of the work facing you. I prefer the first method because the front of the piece is always facing, and I find it easier to follow a pattern, but some people might prefer this because with this method you don't have to switch hands. So we're going to, let's see, put this tail end up here, insert the hook from the back through to the front under the 2 loops and pull through a loop and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So we're going to continue across the row from, under these 2 loops from back to front, yarn over, pull through a loop, and yarn over again. With this method, you'll still have all of the stitches on facing front. You'll have all the back on one side and the front on another. Again, this is a method that I don't use, but I thought I'd show it to you because you might prefer this. Some people find it very awkward to switch hands. This is the last stitch. Pull through 1, yarn over. Now I'm going to chain 1 and turn it again. Now we'll work across the row. Well, let's carry a yarn first. So we can lay in our yarn over the loops and start to carry it. So you can use either of these 2 methods to crochet flat tapestries, or you can also combine this flat tapestry crochet with tapestry crocheting rounds like I did for my camera case. Okay, here now let me show you how this looks. Looks just like the previous technique. We have the front of the stitches on both rows on the same side, and then the back. Okay, now let me show you how to crochet a border around your flat tapestry crochet piece. I like to single crochet a border around my flat tapestries to give it a more finished look. Notice how this flat tapestry looks without the border. Let me show you how I do that. Okay, I'm in the middle actually of crocheting the very last row of my piece. I'll continue it to the end of the row. Always continue to carry your yarn of your other color. And let's see, we're almost to the end. On every corner stitch, you will single crochet 3 stitches in the same stitch. 1, 2, 3. And this is so that we can turn around the corner and still remain flat. Now we're going to turn the piece and crochet across the side of the piece. Now I normally crochet about 1 stitch into every row, and that's based on the tension and the amount of colors that I carry. Now you might end up crocheting 2 stitches in every stitch, or perhaps you might crochet 2 in one and 1 in another, and it all depends on the look of the border. If you notice, this is fairly flat, but if the border were starting to pucker, or if it was starting to look wavy, then you would have to crochet a different amount of stitches. For a puckered border means that you don't have enough stitches, and a wavy border would mean that you had too many stitches. But as you can see, for me it works out perfectly to crochet 1 stitch into every row. Now the borders that I make are fairly plain. I usually just crochet 1 row around, but I do carry my yarn, and I could make 3, 4, 5 rows, whatever. In fact, I could even switch yarns. Let me just show you, and crochet a decorative border. It's really up to you. Whoops, let me do a few more, and then I'll show you. Okay, now let's take a look at this. You see how much more finished this side looks than this side. Now I do 3 stitches in every corner as I go around, and if I wanted to make a border of more than 1 row, I would continue single crocheting, but always I would crochet 3 stitches in the corner stitch, and that would be to make a flat border. If you would like to make a raised border or even a square basket, you could just stop increasing in the corners and the walls would just come straight up. Okay, now let me show you how to design your own motifs. Let me show you some things that will help you design your own motif. I crocheted this bag in rounds on the bottom, if you notice, and the flap I crocheted back and forth in the flat tapestry crochet technique. Let's look at the circles on the bag. If you notice, the bottom circle is shorter than the top circle. This circle was crocheted carrying 1 yarn, while this circle was crocheted carrying 2 yarns. That's an important consideration when designing a motif. Also notice that each stitch is not above one another. It's slightly offset and also slants to the right. I'm right-handed, so I crochet this bag in rounds with my right hand, so all of the stitches slant to the right. Now, left-handed crochet stitches slant to the left. If you look at the insert, on the inside there are 4 graph papers that I've designed specifically for tapestry crochet. This one in the upper right was designed for right-handed crocheters, and in the upper left for left-handed crocheters. These papers take into consideration stitch placement and the configuration. Okay, now let's look at the flap that was crocheted with the flat tapestry technique. Okay, with the flat technique, if you look at the stitches of one row point to the right, while the stitches of another point to the left. This is because you're crocheting from right to left and left to right. Also, each stitch is not directly above one another. Now that's why I designed the graph papers in the bottom part of your insert. This paper was designed for carrying one yarn. The stitch height is much shorter. While this paper was designed for carrying 2 or more yarns, the stitch height is much higher. Now again with these 2 circles, if you notice, this circle was crocheted carrying 1 yarn. Notice that the stitch height is shorter than this bottom circle, which was crocheted carrying 2 yarns. The height of the stitch is often an important consideration when designing. If you would like to design a motif that is larger than the paper on the insert, you can photocopy the graph paper and then tape them together. Okay, one way you can do this is to line up all of the shells in the graph paper, and so you get them just right, and then tape it together. If you have a light table or you have a window available, you can place it face down and tape from the back. Okay, and if you get this just right, you can re-photocopy what you've taped and then tape them together. Okay, now I would like to show you how I usually design a motif. Usually what I do is I just play around coloring in various shells until I get a motif that I like. If I make a mistake, I simply erase it. Okay, here I'm designing a deer. A lot of existing crafts like needlepoint, embroidery, crochet already have a number of motifs available that are easily transferred to this type of graph paper, and you can use them for tapestry crochet. Another source of inspiration would be your local museum, folk art, or even Mother Nature can give you a few ideas for your tapestry crochet. Okay, after we've colored in a motif that we like, the next step is to count the number of horizontal stitches that make up the motif. In this case, we have a total of 12 stitches. Now this is important because I want to repeat this motif on a pillow. This is the same motif that we just designed, and the pillow is made up of a multiple of 12 stitches so that I can repeat the deer all the way across as many times as I would like. Now, why don't you design your own motif and incorporate it into a project? Okay, now I would like to show you how to design a tapestry with a photographic image. I used a black and white photograph for my tapestry. I simply projected this black and white image with an opaque projector onto a piece of graph paper that was taped to a wall. Let me move this so you can see the comparison. When I projected the image, I had to decide which were the dark areas, the medium, and the light areas, and I outlined all those areas on my graph paper. Next, I filled in the medium areas with a lighter pencil and the dark areas with a dark pencil. I did have to make a decision, however. Where my line intersected a shell, I had to decide, do I color that in or not? In some cases I did. For instance, here it appears that more of the dark area occupies the space, so I decided to darken it. With this shell, there appears to be more of a light area, so I left it light. If a line intersects right in the middle of a shell, you'll have to make that decision yourself. Experience will teach you. Okay, the next step was to transfer it to square graph paper. If you notice on the shell graph paper, these stitches on the right border will show you which stitch is above another one. When you have established that, you can transfer it to this square paper, and this makes it much easier for you to crochet. You can also use a slide for an image. If you have a slide projector, you can project it onto your graph paper, draw it, fill it in, and transfer it and crochet it too. After you've designed and crocheted a number of repetitive motifs and a few photographic motifs, you might want to try a more complex image like portraiture. As you can see from my work, I really enjoy crocheting portraits, and I really have tried to make them as realistic as possible, and that's part of the reason why I designed the crochet papers. Okay, this portrait that I worked on was actually supposed to be a necklace. It turned out looking more like a bib though, so I decided to transform it into an art piece. It usually hangs on my wall with a plexiglass frame. I started out the image with this digitized portrait of myself, and then instead of projecting it, I put it on a light table and covered it with a graph paper, and then I traced the darker areas and the lighter areas. And after that, I transferred it onto the square graph paper to make it easier for me to work. If you notice, the edges of the portrait are rounded, which corresponds to the jagged sort of edge here. I didn't crochet it perfectly square because I wanted a more rounded look. This is the first piece that I did with a photographic image. Unfortunately, I used square ruled graph paper and did not take into consideration the size or placement of the stitches. An elongated face was the result. This was my second photographic piece. I projected Dr. Martin Luther King's image onto rectangular ruled graph paper, taking into consideration the size of the stitches, but not stitch placement. When you look close at the face, you will notice the irregularity of the outlines. This is the first piece that considered both stitch size and placement. The image was projected and traced onto the special graph paper, then transferred to square ruled graph paper. As many colored yarns as you can handle can be incorporated into a piece. I try not to work with more than 3 yarns at the same time to avoid tall stitches and to avoid a tangled mess of yarns. Through careful planning, a number of colors can be used for a piece, even though only 3 are being crocheted at one time. This tapestry is a good example of careful planning. If 3 yarns are required for only a portion of the project, they should be carried from the beginning, even if they will not be immediately utilized, to assure a consistent, unwarped result. If each color is introduced as needed, the piece will have a lumpy appearance because stitches made over the carried yarns will be taller. Perhaps an uneven appearance is desirable for a particular piece. It is all up to you. I hope you've enjoyed this tapestry crochet workshop. If you would, please send me slides or photographs of your pieces in care of Victorian Video Productions. I'm anxious to see what you'll do with tapestry crochet. Good luck and have fun!